Endurance E-Racing World Championship Le Mans 24 Hours is brought to you by ESR Esports Network, Fleet Gaming, SimLab, Husingfeld, Simplexity, Acetech, and AMD Ryzen Radio.
Okay. Dennis Jordan on. Okay, I'm gonna go on board with it. Gonna just change the angle briefly because I love these home camera angles.
Welcome back to the GTR 24H EEWC finale here from Le Mans. We are now just over 10 hours to go in this race. Still a very long way in this race, and it's going to be a very interesting one, that is for sure. But we are now joined by Michi Hoier of the team of Burst Edge Esports, currently leading the LMP2 category. They have 1 minute and a half over Idos Motorsport, who've just come into the pit lane, and they're in the middle of a cycle at the moment, so that's not exactly a representative gap, but it will be in a few laps. Either way, Michi, how's the race going for you guys at the moment? How are you feeling down there in the Burst Edge Esports camp, and what is Dennis Jordan saying about the car as you're running around there at the moment?
Yeah, first of all, things are going really smooth for us. Like we haven't had any huge incident. I had a spin, but we didn't have any huge contact, so as long as we can keep the race like this, I think we're gonna have pretty good chances. But of course, the race is still long, and now with the rain starting to fall, it's an interesting situation arising there at the minute.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of that not quite very wet rain. It's just not really kind of wet enough for wets, which is really awkward for you guys. How are you going to manage it, and where is the point where you really have to start thinking about wet weather tyres? Do you think this rain shower is going to just pass over, or is this going to be a sustained rainstorm where you're going to have to use the wets at some point?
That depends. Like, we were looking on the radar and we expected the rain to maybe just pass the track without touching it, but it came different. And well, in this time of the year, once it starts raining, it may just continue. As I said, it's an interesting situation because currently the racing line is pretty dry, but the offline is pretty wet already, and you see the lap times dropping like 3 or 4 seconds at the minute from live timing screen, so you can definitely see that the water on the track's rising, which yeah, is an interesting call whether to go for the inters or whether to stay on the dry at the minute. For the heavy wets are definitely out of question at the minute, but yeah, things can change quickly.
Yeah, they definitely can, and just talking about that weather radar, there is suspicions that there could be some quite heavy rain later on, so how would you feel if the next time you get in the car it's absolutely tipping it down, and how would you feel with a stint in full wet conditions? Would that be to your liking or not?
Well, probably not 100% to the liking, because it just makes things a little trickier. It just makes things a lot more risky and a lot more dangerous. But well, 4 weeks ago we ran 8 hours Silverstone where it really poured down from the sky. So the guys in the car, and we got some late or quite recent heavy wet experience. So well, hopefully if it pours down we can make that for good use.
Yeah, of course. And one last question before we let you go, Michi. When are you going to be next getting into that car with Dennis Jordan out there at the moment? When are you next getting in? Sorry.
Well, it depends. Like, depending on how Dennis will feel after 2 stints, I'm gonna go for a double stint and I go to sleep, or either I'm gonna go to sleep and yeah, very soon to be back in the car towards the end of the race. It's going to be a decision Dennis has taken. I think as he just fiddled himself in with the conditions right there from the beginning, really, we maybe just leave him in the car, as he's one of the guys that can drive for hours without doing mistakes and still have a reasonable pace.
Yeah, of course, very, very fast driver indeed. Yeah, congratulations on how the race has gone so far. It's been, as you said, very smooth for you and looking very good so far. Fingers crossed for you for the rest of the race. Michi Hoier, thanks very much for coming to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. It's still a little bit early to celebrate, but if we've got to survive the night in the rain, we're going to be fine.
Yeah, of course. Thanks very much for talking to us once again. It's been a pleasure. So yeah, Michi Hoier of the Burst Edge Esports team, as he said, running very smoothly. It has to be said, and on that occasion, being very flexible with their strategy and totally up to Dennis Jordan with what they're going to do next. I feel like being flexible in that kind of respect is a good thing when these conditions are so changeable.
Absolutely, that's what you want to do. Like you want to have the maximum amount of options available to you at all times. The last thing you want to do is to tie yourself hard into something, because whenever the conditions change, whenever something happens, whenever something doesn't go your way, and you can't really expect in a 24 hours our race that everything will go your way at all times. So you know, you want to have the options, and that's the sign of a really professional organization and a really great team that we know Burst Edge Esport to be. That Burst have been in the scene really for multiple years, and they've always made their name at the top of the game, and that's why they are where they are in terms of the standings in the series and in terms of the world of sim racing in general. Like that's just the hallmark of them, as they right now make their way into the pit lane. Actually, Dennis Jordan of Burst Edge Esport taking that number 5 into the pit lane, but as we just heard from Michi, I think he's gonna go for another stint.
He is indeed. Whether he continues on after that is really up to him in about 40 minutes time, but we do have a battle now on the circuit for 8th in GT3, a long way down the order, but we were talking to him earlier on. Simon Marshall is beginning to make moves in that Team Rookie Monsters car. He's straight in front now, pulling to the inside of the Teleforingen Corvette, that is. It's just gone behind, and Simon Marshall in that older generation McLaren has moved in front now, making a bit of progress. Good move into the first chicane. Not much the Corvette could have done about that, and an interesting choice actually I'd like to bring up here with the 999 using that older generation McLaren. I don't really understand why they would actually go for them. Meanwhile, DIS are having their own issues, it seems, at the moment. It's not been that their last couple of hours they've had a real torrid time of it.
Yeah, they really have. Once again, we're getting yellow flags on screen, and well, the 45 still seems to be going out there. The 46 had some issues earlier on, so you know, causing yellow flags in sector 3, and at least the 45 is doing all right, and that's their main car at the moment, so that's good to hear about the 46. Checking in on them real briefly, they're out there on the main straight once more, so whatever the issue was, it at least wasn't fatal for their race progress.
No, absolutely not, but something that might be fatal at the moment is the DSR Dream Team missing their front right wheel, I do believe, and they're in the pit lane at the moment trying to get that fixed, and B32 Racing Car is unfortunately also in the garage at the moment. I don't know if they're going to be able to rejoin. Hopefully they do, as Danish Racing League car is also now had a brief problem. That's allowed Liam Rance in the satellite car to get through, but that's obviously a GTE on GT3 fight. So this rain now is beginning to let some mistakes creep in, and we were expecting that when it actually hit. We were expecting immediate crashes actually, but it seems that it's taken a few laps now, and finally we are seeing the mistakes begin to creep in.
Yeah, that's what's happening out there, and it's gonna continue to happen even more once the rain starts to fall harder, once the conditions on the track get even more treacherous, and that's where the experience comes in. We talked earlier about experience in driving. Ewan, we talked about, you know, having those rookies in your team, having those monsters in your team also, and Team Rookie Monsters and whatnot. But rain experience, it's a whole different ball game. You need to really practice the slippery conditions. You need to practice where the grip is and also where the grip isn't. I'm looking at some of the guys out there on track, and they're still taking curbs, so that's a good sign in that there still seems to be some grip at least available, because under heavy rain conditions you don't want to be on those curbs. You don't want to be anywhere where it's painted or where it's curved, or anywhere that there might be even a fraction of less grip than usual, because that's really what's gonna do you in. So while the conditions are bad bad and getting worse, they're still not terrible. They're still just fine for racing, and that means that as of right now, you can still feel comfortable in having the slightly more inexperienced driver at the helm. But once it starts to pour down harder, then you want to get the Rainmasters in, the Regenmeisters in, the guys who are comfortable racing in bad conditions, that have the reflexes and the skill set to handle it. And that can be a whole different skill set, as I mentioned earlier. Something interesting I want to point out also about racing lines is that in the rainy conditions, you usually tend to want to avoid the rubber on the racetrack, because that's going to become really slippery once the rain starts to fall down hard. So you might see some different racing lines. You might see some guys taking the outside line, the karting line, so to speak, into the corners. You might want to, you might even see some guys, you know, taking different line on the exit and just really, you know, having to maneuver their way around the track in a different fashion, and that can throw you off your rhythm, especially if you have to do it in the middle of the race, because you've been expecting to do these lines for all throughout the event. You've been practicing these lines, you've been doing like whatever 30, 40, 50 hours, even more of practice around this track at one single line, chasing that ultimate lap time in dry conditions, and now all of a sudden you have to do it all different.
Yeah, absolutely, and that can really throw you off in many ways, and that is going to be a little bit of a shame for some of these guys, especially when they find themselves in the wall. It is going to be a shame, but Dueces Motorsport Club at the moment in GTE, this is the battle we've been focusing on for a little bit of a while, as Enzo Fazzi looks like he's off the road somewhere.
He is off the road after the second chicane, and he is also out of the server.
Oh, that's terrible news for Enzo Fazzi and Idos Motorsport. Yeah, you're right, I can't see him on the... yeah, he's in the garage at the moment. That is really bad news for Idos and really good news for Burst Edge Esport. I didn't see what happened to him in the accident, but he's definitely out of it now.
Yeah, so Enzo Fazzi seemed to be after the second chicane, unless I'm much mistaken. No, after the first chicane, excuse me, that went the other way around. So yeah, after the first chicane, that car was in the wall. And I can't help but imagine if it's at that point, it either has to be with the traffic, or he was a little bit too greedy with the corner exit. Either way, that car didn't look healthy at all. He was crawling on for a few hundred meters, few hundred yards before deciding that, you know what, we're gonna need the rescue service. We're gonna need to tow this car back into the pit lane, get it into the garage to get it repaired. So that's a real shame for Enzo Fazzi and his whole team. Wow.
Yeah, it is real difficult times for those guys. And I mentioned earlier on, actually, that Enzo Fazzi is one of the more experienced drivers in this field, one of the more experienced drivers in that car. That's a very safe pair of hands, I would have thought, to put into that car at this moment in time. He's one of the best drivers to actually have in at this precise moment, because he is so safe. But I just have to wonder whether there's been connection or actual damage issues there, because normally he is a very safe pair of hands, and someone you'd really want to have in that car at this stage of the race.
It just goes to show you how difficult the conditions are. So that's really, you know, just the difficulty of rainy conditions, the difficulty that even drivers like Enzo Fazzi, who has been a mainstay in the top category of sim racing for multiple years now, can make mistakes in these conditions. We are believing it is a mistake because I saw that car crawling slowly. It might be also a hardware issue, it could be any number of issues, but right now I'm leaning on the theory based on the spot the car was in. Meanwhile, I'm also looking at Jordi San Andres in that number 51 car, and he is only 4.7 seconds behind Adam Baldwin, and that, mind you, is for the GDE class lead. We promised to our viewers that we will get you back on that battle after the commercial break. Well, it's 15 minutes later, but here we go. That battle is indeed on. So, for GDE category lead, and that's gonna get really spicy, and I can't imagine Dueces Motorsports Club in that 74 are gonna give it up that easily.
No, they're absolutely not. Adam Baldwin has been driving quite a lot in that car so far this race. Really accustomed to the conditions, and I think that's helping him at this stage of the race. But Jordi San Andres might be a little bit more fresh at this stage. He came out and got into that car about 20 seconds behind. These two cars, by the way, throughout the race have been so close. It's quite remarkable. The World of Sim Racing car had one brief pit stop where they had to take an ever so slightly longer stop. They lost 25 seconds for some reason, but ever since then they've been slowly reeling it back in, and now we got to this point where the gap is only 4.5 seconds, and it could be really on here before you know it, as Adam Baldwin comes into the pit lane. So not quite on the hour like we're normally accustomed to seeing, but World of Sim Racing follow them in. These guys normally pit on the same lap, and they're doing so again here. So now this battle goes into the pit lane.
That it indeed does. It's no longer a battle of the drivers, but battle of the pit crews. We had the gap at around 4 seconds before they came to the pit lane. Now it's going to be very interesting to see, will we have a driver change in that number 74 car? Because Adam Baldwin, as you mentioned, he's been there in a while in the Dueces Motorsports Club car, and I truly wonder if they're going to put somebody in. We got Wojta Poleshny, Joao Barbosa, and Michael Sedlacek in that vehicle available. So let's see if any one of those three are feeling comfortable getting in there in these rainy conditions.
Yeah, it's a difficult time to get in, I would suggest, but either way, necessary at this point. Polesny's been doing quite a lot of driving so far. Sedlacek I've seen a lot less of, and I've also seen quite a lot less of the other driver in that car, whose name escapes me at this particular moment in time, Joao Barbosa. Oh no, we have seen quite a lot of Joao, so I think he will not be getting into that car quite as much as we have seen him so far, if you see what I mean. Sedlacek is going to have to make up for lost time, if you see what I mean, in terms of his driving time. But we've just had a bit of a report from Nick Newcomb on the Enzo Fazzi crash. Well, we think it is a crash in this race, as Joao Barbosa does get into that car, and Alvaro Martinez gets into Worlds of Sim Racing car. So that battle continues on out of the pit lane. But Enzo Fazzi crashed and was driving very slowly on the Mulsanne straight before he escaped back to the pit lane, and now I don't know if they're back out again. He's in the pit lane, back in the race at the very least, but I think he is going to be losing a lap there and out of the podium positions when all is said and done here. I think that's a real shame for Enzo Fazzi and the whole team, of course.
Yeah, I bet they're not feeling all too warm and fuzzy right now.
Wow, that's another one to you see, he's a natural. It just comes to him. Wow, I'm amazed that you've got the brain power for that at whatever it is, nearly 4:30 in the morning, but either way.
No, actually, it's now earlier in the morning than it was last time we mentioned.
I thought it was only going the clocks back in the UK, but apparently it is in Finland as well.
It is a thing. So you know, I was talking to you last time. It was something like 3:45 a.m. Now it's 3:20 a.m. So yeah.
You've gone back, yeah, and on the same day as well, you've gone back in time. Although it is a bit demoralising when you've just got to 2 o'clock, because we're going through the night here, me and Ossian, at the GTR 24H at Le Mans 24 hours. It's a bit demoralising to get to 2 a.m. You're like, you know, you're counting down the hours till sunrise, and then you see it's 1 o'clock again, and you've got to start all over again. It's a little bit disappointing on occasion, but never mind, we'll get over it, and we're enjoying the racing at the moment. That's what's powering us through for now. So yeah, it's been a very good race so far, and I'm enjoying it, and it's set to get even better towards the end. I'm sure about that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you know, are you waiting for this to end? Why would you want this to end? This is a wonderful race, and I wish it continued for longer. How about 48 hours of Le Mans next year? Oh no, please don't. But that would really be a test on the drivers and crews and the entire organization. I'm sure Peter behind the scenes, for example, is dreading already. He is 2 hours of sleep last 2 weeks or something, whatever he has had, the madman. So, you know, something that occurred to me, because we are doing this once the clocks are turned back. Why don't we have 25 hours of Le Mans?
That's a good point, really. As I mentioned earlier on, is that David Nichols going slowly, by the way? It is, yes. Oh well, that's one of the issues, yeah, that Peter just brings up to us. You can only do 24 hours maximum in R-Factor 2, so you can't actually get 25 hours at the moment, which is a little bit of a shame for those who are crazy enough to actually want to do 25 hours, so if 24 wasn't enough. But yeah, I remember talking to Nick a little bit earlier on, and he was saying that he never wants to organise a race when the clocks go back ever again, because the changes that it makes is really quite confusing, because this race, this UK time, started midday yesterday on Saturday. It's going to finish at 11 AM on the Sunday, which is what me and Cam thought it was going to end, actually. We thought we were handing over to Yusuf and Alex to take you through the first hour of the race, and I said that before the commercial break, but it actually turned out not to be, and we panicked a few drivers and teams, actually, I think, into thinking that it was in a couple of minutes' time, when actually it was in an hour and a few minutes' time. So apologies for that, but time zones are confusing and weird sometimes. It's kind of a pain, but you know, we get over it, and you know, we wouldn't want to miss out on one of these 24-hour races, that's for sure.
No, absolutely not. But I was just wondering, time zones are confusing. You live in the country that Greenwich Main Time is named for. Greenwich is in UK.
Car off track at Indianapolis. Car off track at Indianapolis.
And we are also hearing, as you are hearing, I'm sure, from
Green
race
team,
control,
I think.
we have a car off track at Indianapolis corner.
I think it is the DSR Dream Team car, the 766. Now, how slowly are they going? Are they posing a danger to anybody? It doesn't look like they are, from what I can see so far. They're getting out of the way pretty nicely there, heading into Arnage. So that's good to see. I'm glad that these people are just paying attention and getting out of the way now. And there is definitely a way to be a damaged car. You don't want to just be on the racing line and going really slowly. You've got to get out of the way. You've got to be offline, and as I said, there is definitely a good way and a bad way to be a damaged car.
In Sector 3, car in Sector 3, damaged car in Sector 3.
Yeah, just getting warnings also from the race control about the damaged car, and you know, can I just give a shout out to race control? I know it seems like I'm once again, you know, licking their shoes or something, licking their boots, but I have no reason to. So just shout out to those guys who keep up the great work for 24 hours, broadcast these messages, letting drivers know that
engage pit limiter. Car 766, engage pit limiter.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Even as a driver, when you're feeling lonely, when it's like 2 AM or 3 AM and then once again 2 AM at some point through the night, then you want to get that warm and fuzzy feeling of at least somebody's looking over you. You spotted something.
Yeah, Team Rookie Monsters have come together with the Danish Racing League car there. They were both spun around into turn number 1. No idea what happened, but I know they were battling. Simon Marshall must have gone for a move, and there must have been a bit of an incident between the two of them. So yeah, incidents are definitely starting to creep in here, as off the road goes the Danish Racing League. Ferrari comes back on, luckily avoids the Seawolf car, but he looks actually a little bit damaged there, does that driver. Not entirely sure who's driving at the moment, or if there is any damage in that car, but it certainly doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't at all. So number 13, and just gonna fetch the driver list real briefly. We don't have the information directly to us, but we can at least check the possibilities to narrow it down a little bit. So the drivers in that car are Jesper Pihl Jensen, Stefan Lunga, Martin Flins Gronbeck, and Mikael Gronegård Jensen. So it's a 50% chance of it being Jensen behind the wheel of that car.
Clear.
I think there's a 50% chance of it being a Jensen with any Danish driver that's actually driving ever, if I'm honest. They don't often put much variety into them. Not very imaginative with their second names, the Danish, but there you have it. Obviously, it's still a very Danish contingent lineup there for the Danish Racing League. It looks like they're finally up to speed again, so we've given them a bit of airtime. Yeah, it's maybe not the airtime they maybe wanted, but yeah, it's good to get all of the cars on the stream at some point, and I'm pretty sure throughout the 24 hours we do get extensive coverage of pretty much all of the drivers and all of the teams as well. As now I'm looking at Enzo Fuzzy, and it's not looking particularly good for Idos Motorsport. I can't see anybody getting back into that car for the moment. Have they given up and gone home? I'm waiting to see. Well, they're still there in the TeamSpeak channel. They are still there. Enzo Fuzzy is away. There's a few muted people, and Luca D'Amelio doesn't want to hear any of it at the moment, but they're still there, and I don't think they've given up. They might return, Idos.
They just might want to finish the race, but at this point it's looking very grim for that Pro Sim machine. Now, you said about airtime, not the airtime you want to get. Well, there are three kinds of airtime at Le Mans. There is the airtime you get after victory, and, you know, being on that podium, spraying champagne, and, you know, being celebrated as winners of Le Mans, which, as we know, is the grandest achievement you can have at life. Don't at me. Then there is the kind of airtime you get after having a crash. You know, they're showing your car wrecked and you made a mistake, maybe showing a couple of replays, showing basically how you can fail at life. And then there is the third kind of airtime, which is Mark Webber.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one. Yeah, of course, if you don't know, I'm sure you do. Anyone watching this stream, especially at this time of night, will probably have seen that clip before. Maybe even watched it in real life when it was, or not real life, but watched it when it was actually live. I don't think I was alive though, so I definitely couldn't have. But either way, he definitely had a bit of an accident, and fortunately he was fine. But it's certainly one of the more spectacular moments we've ever seen at Le Mans, and it's used in quite a lot of montages of the event because it's just so spectacular, really.
Yeah, and they did it a couple of times that weekend, Mark Webber, and I think it was Peter Dumbrek in that car, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Dumbrek, I think, was the one who went end over end actually into the forest, whereas Mark Webber just went, you know, on his lead and pretty much wanted to feel like at home because, of course, he's from Australia.
Yeah, being upside down, kind of enjoying himself. There's Bogdanov there is getting off the road, I believe. 9th place overall, 3rd in the LMP2 class. There's a lot of LMP2 cars to cycle through for me to get to. I think he's in the pit lane, and I think he could be out here. Could he? Maybe not. Who is that then in the garage? Is that Idos? I think I've just clicked on Idos actually. I'm getting unnecessarily worried. So Bogdanov looks like he has been for a spin because he was catching Paul Holt, but now he's gone for a spin and he's falling back as Dennis Jordan, the race leader, makes a pit stop.
Yeah, that he does. Meanwhile, I've been keeping my eyes steadily on the GDE lead battle, of course, now between Joao Barbosa and Alvaro Martinez in the Barbosa in the 74 Dueces Motorsport Club car and Martinez in the WOSR iZone performance vehicle. And that gap has gone up. It's now at 9.5 seconds, where before the pit stop it was 4 seconds, mind you. And last time by, Martinez did a 4:06.5 chasing, while leading Barbosa did a 4:04.8. So the driver change 40-51, well, it looks like Martinez is going to need a couple of more laps to get into his groove. That, or they just have a different setup where they potentially have a car that comes to life later on in the stint. Either or, that battle looks to be fizzling into some trench warfare at the moment.
Drillers Esports, another big moment in LMP2, 3rd place in the category and 5th overall a few moments ago, but now definitely falling down the order with that big incident that they have had. They have lost their rear wing and they have been spinning into the first chicane, so Drillers now are going to have to probably slow down. They're probably going to be asked to engage the pit limiter before long because they have no rear wing. A crash at Tete Rouge, you might have seen it on the stream, but there was a huge accident for them. They've lost the rear wing for the 2nd time in this event here today, just skipping across the 2nd chicane there. That's probably the safest thing to do if you can see the barriers, and he can indeed. He gets past them, he lets through that other prototype who was right behind, and now Bogdanov, after having such a great stint, he was closing in on Paul Holt quite a lot. He's going to lose an awful lot of time. I don't think he's going to lose a position because Prosim are a lap and a half behind, but that is a big moment for Bojan Bogdanov, and that is really, really bad news for him and Drillers Esports.
Yeah, that's Bogdanov's race gone pretty much down the drain at this moment, at least hindered, if not totally ruined. And of course, it's a team effort, so Drillers Esports suddenly having a difficult day, and rain starting to catch people out. At this point, just all you can say, you know, rain starting to catch people out, these conditions, maybe in combination with tiredness, and that's what really makes this interesting now, where we may have had a storyline, you know, going into this race even, where we saw the practice times, we saw the qualifying times, we had a rough idea in our head about what times will these guys be doing and who will be the favorites and who's gonna be, you know, a little bit further back down the order. But now with the rain, it's all about trying to minimize mistakes, trying to keep the pace strong while not taking any unnecessary risks. And I think these drivers and these teams have had quite a few warnings now of what can happen when drivers like Bogdanov, like Enzo Fassi are making mistakes in the rain. If it can happen to those guys, it can happen to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, you know what else can happen to anyone?
What?
They need to take a commercial break. I think we're at that point.
We are indeed.
The Endurance E-Racing World Championship Le Mans 24 Hours is brought to you by ESR Esports Network, Fleet Gaming, SimLab, Husingfeld, Simplexity, Acetip, and AMD Ryzen Radio.
Do you hate watching laggy streams of tournaments on 13-inch screens? Oh my god! Of course you do. But you don't have to worry about that anymore. He has a cup, son!
Simplexity is a Danish designer and manufacturer of high-grade sim racing platforms. There are 3 different levels of platforms come in a variety of colors and configurations. Choose from the V4, built from 40 by 40mm extruded aluminium profiles, the V8 built from 80 by 40mm profiles, and the high-tier V12 built from 160 by 40mm extruded aluminium profiles. Prices range from 470 to 750 euros. Go to facebook.com/simplexity.eu and start a messenger chat to inquire more about the options for colors and customization.
Welcome back to the GTR 24H Sprint Series EEWC finale here from the Le Mans 24 Hours. 9.5 hours still remaining in this race. A very long time to go indeed, as we're watching Bogdanov just repair the damage that he has caused after that accident. He is going again though. It looks like he's still going to be third place by about 3 minutes ahead of the ProSim car, which has been very consistent and stayed right up towards the pointy end. They've done a great job so far to stay in the position that they are in, and now they could be rewarded with a podium later on. But the closest battle we've got going on the circuit, I believe, is the battle for the lead in GTE. We were noting before the break that João Barbosa seemed to be a bit as we got one of the rookie monsters LMP2s off at Tete Rouge, but it's going again without any damage. excuse me, so the mistakes really are starting to creep in. But yeah, the closest battle on the circuit at the moment, the GTE battle for the race lead. Charles Barbosa was much quicker than Alvaro Martinez, I thought, in the opening to this stint, but now it seems that Martinez is finding his feet a little bit and starting to make some inroads back into Charles Barbosa.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like, even. So it's starting to change the balance of between these two drivers. And now, still, last time around, actually, Barbosa was 3.5 seconds slower than Martinez. So there has to be some sort of an issue that slowed Barbosa down. Maybe issues with traffic, maybe just not finding a grip in one of the corners and having a little bit of an off-track experience, or trying to avoid somebody. Whatever it may have been, the 74 has lost a bit of time last time around, so that's allowed Alvaro Martinez in that 51 to close in and make that gap 7.5 seconds at the moment. Now, mind you, it's not just between these two guys, because silently in the background, where Martinez has been doing 406.7 last time around, David Greco in that 53 Musto GD Esports car, we know those boys are fast, 404.8, which was the fastest lap time in the entire GDE category last time around, and that puts them 13.8 seconds behind, so under 14 seconds behind Alvaro. So these guys are now within 20 seconds of each other.
Yeah, after over 14.5 hours of racing, the gap now is, as you rightly say, between 3 cars, separated by 15 seconds. That is truly remarkable at the moment. Don't really know why Barbosa was a bit slower on that last lap there, because it was not like there was extensive traffic. There was one Corvette in the way, and maybe one McLaren as well, both GT3 cars that he hadn't to negotiate. But unless you get them in a really bad place, they were pretty spaced out, so I wouldn't expect them to make too much of a difference. Certainly not 3 seconds, but he looks to have picked it back up again throughout the most part of this lap, although it is now dipping below 7 seconds for the first time. So I just wonder if he's maybe gone out a little bit too hard and he's suffering the effects of that. But yeah, there's nobody stopping David Greco at the moment at 4:04.8 on the last lap, comprehensively quicker than everybody in that class on that last lap. So yeah, he's closing in, and we could see a 3-car battle for the race lead in GTE. That would be absolutely fantastic to see.
In pouring rain, 3-car GDE lead battle coming to the sunrise hours at Le Mans. That would be quite a prospect, I would say. That's a prospect worth staying up all night for, I think, Ewan.
Yeah, I think so. With those 3, they're really fast teams, really fast drivers as well. It's not like they're just 3 evenly matched teams and they're not at the top of their game. These are the real best GT drivers on R-Factor 2 at the moment, and it would be fantastic to see them battle it out. We'll see, though, what the lap times are when they come across the line, because the World Sim Racing car looks like it's really struggling through this final sector now. Maybe it is time for... Maybe the lap times are deteriorating. Maybe the intermediates have to be considered here before long, because these lap times are starting to drop off quite considerably. 4:09.0 for João Barbosa on that occasion, nearly 20 seconds slower than his fastest lap. A 4:08.3 for Martinez, so he is definitely still closing on Barbosa, which is a little bit of a surprise, but still very good to see from him, and very good pace as well, considering he's only just got in the car.
Yeah, and Greco put in a 4:08.6, and that's actually not that good. In fact, Oliver Fortin, who's now back on track in that 15 Simply race car, put in a 4:06. So Greco had a little bit of a rougher lap, and he has some traffic too right in front of him. So that's not necessarily the best case situation at this point in time, but it's still something that, you know, he just has to deal with, and anyone has to deal with in a 24-hour endurance race. Can we actually get an ID on who that is just ahead of David Greco?
Warning all cars, warning all cars.
Second place.
Slow car in Sector 2, just out of second Mulsanne.
I think that might be Mantis Rekas, by the way. I saw the yellow flags a little bit earlier on, but yeah, that was the Sim Racing Motorsport car of Alvaro in Chelsea, I believe, although I thought that car was a bit more green than that, but although That's what the position indicator is suggesting.
Yep, it is.
So yeah, it looks like both Rookie Monsters cars are having a bit of a problem here in LMP2. Trying to find the slower one, and this 337 is off at the Porsche curves, and that's not good at all for Taylor Lane, who is in 9th in class, and he's about to drop some more positions because of that accident there.
Yeah, that's the place you don't want to go off in, because in the dark, that's not a brightly lit place at all. That's not somewhere that you have some of the floodlights, you have some visibility, but you have the yellow flags and that's it. And if you make your way back to the track, as we can see, he's still struggling with the car. In fact, he is right now in front of the... Is that a GDE leader? Is that
the overall leader?
Oh, overall leader, right. Hypercars. See, that's the problem with hypercars.
It is.
Because they look like GDEs from a distance. Now, before anybody goes like, what is that guy doing there? That's not a McLaren Senna. McLaren Senna is not a GDE car, it's a hypercar. How can you mix those two? When you have a quick glance and you see a car that looks like the McLaren Senna, you're thinking GDE because that's what they've looked like for the last 10 years or so. You're not thinking the prime category because you're used to LMP1s. But still, I love the hypercar idea. I just absolutely adore it, That's just one of the underlying issues I have with it.
Yeah, it's hard to distinguish, especially at night time, and especially when you've got similar looking cars like the McLaren GT3s actually running out there as well. That's the main problem with it, really. It's like when I first watched the ELMS for the first time a few years ago. Spotting the difference between LMP2 and LMP3 I found very, very difficult, because as well the number boards are insanely similar, I thought at the time. The blue and the purple really don't distinguish very well the two categories.
In sector 3, moving towards Porsche curves. Slow car in sector 3, moving towards Porsche curves.
Oh, Nick made me jump there. I completely jumped out my skin because he was so loud and so sudden with that one. I nearly got off my chair. But yeah. It's the Dream Team car once again, who have had a really terrible day, I'm afraid, and they're slow once again out there on the circuit. They might even be overtaken by B32, could be dead last, but it's still good to see them actually lapping out there on the circuit.
Yeah, it's good to see them, keep going and try on until the end. You don't want to let the race go, but those guys have had a very terrible race so far, and I used to see them in podium battles, even in class win battles. And speaking of class leaders, we have David Greco coming into the pit lane at this moment in the GDE class. Now, he had a bit of a slower lap. I couldn't help but notice he was a little bit slower this time around. That's just not due to pitting, but he's right now making his way into the pit lane, so it's going to be very interesting to see how that one plays out for them. And I can't help but notice that 53 is on a different strategy. So the 53 team is on a different strategy to the class leaders.
Pit entrance, track is clear. Car has made pit entrance, track is now clear.
Yeah, so the track is green and clean for everybody out there on the circuit, and we still have that leading battle in GTE to focus on. David Greco into the pit lane, and we'll update you on what's going on with that pit stop in a moment. But for now, it looks like we are joined by your own Quico of the Drillers Esports team. I'm just going to give him the power to talk here, and then hopefully he will be able to chat to us, although he has got his mic muted at the moment, so we might have to wait a few... Oh, here he is.
I'm here.
He is here. So now, yeah, your own, it's been going great. I had actually noticed you've got out the car, but you've clearly been in the last few laps. Henry Cynic has taken over from you for Drillers Esports, and things are going well at the front of the field. How is it for you guys, and what's the feeling in the team?
Well, I think we're all very much aware, especially with the conditions we're now facing. As a leader, you kind of always want the situations to stay the same, because it apparently works well. So if that changes, then you need to be on your toes, and yeah, I'm feeling not that great because there's still a long while to go. I fully trust my teammates, but yeah, these conditions are just so tricky, and yeah, it is pretty difficult actually to manage everything right now. It only takes one split second and you're gone.
Yeah, I can imagine so. It's really on edge as well. Talk to us what it's about in that hypercar at the moment, because we know it's an edgy car at the best of times, particularly on the brakes, and there's no intermediate tyres for that car either. It's either dries or wets, and in these kind of conditions where it's kind of wet, it's kind of sprinkling with rain, but it's not really that wet, you're kind of stuck on the dry tyres. So how is it in these edgy conditions?
Yeah, I was driving, of course, on the dry tire the last couple of laps, and yeah, I don't know, it wasn't too bad. I saw a lot of GTs struggling, and actually in front of them also spinning in front of me, and I was quite surprised to see that, because the hypercar was perfectly fine, to be honest, on those slick tires. So yeah, I was really surprised to see that. But yeah, so be it. I guess the GT is a bit more sensitive to the track wetness right now.
Seems to be the case. And just one final thing as well, before we let you go, Ewan, obviously you've just handed over to Henry Sinek. You just got out of that car, so what's the plan for the rest of the race for you now? When are you next going to be getting into the car?
Yeah, there's one more stint well, two stints actually. One set of two stints. I reckon that will be in roughly 6 hours time. So yeah, we're just hoping to finish this, of course, and bring it home. But it's not an easy task. Also with the warnings from the cuts you make, that kind of stuff, you really need to be on your toes.
Yeah, of course. So we wish you luck with that, and congratulate you on the first few hours of this race. It's gone very well for you so far, and we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the race.
Yeah, cheers, man. All the best, and thanks for the broadcast. All the best.
Thanks very much to Jeroen Kweekel there of the Pinsim Drillers Esports hypercar there, number 10. Very upbeat, as you might imagine, about the race that's going on at the moment. And not too fazed by the weather conditions either. He seemed completely unaffected by them at all. He wasn't complaining about it. He wasn't saying how difficult it was, and you know, just trying to make it sound more difficult than it was. He's just like, well, it happened, and I just got on with it. He's not really bothered by the rain.
Well, it's the same for everyone. I think that's my sort of impression I got from him, you know.
Yeah.
That very stoic, very Kimi Räikkönen way of approaching the situation, where you don't really need to make a fuss about it, and that's the right approach. That's the thing. But that doesn't sit well with everybody. That isn't how everybody is, you know, thinking about things, because it's a cultural thing, and it's also a language thing, and it's a team thing, where some teams might be like, okay, we need to hurry up, we need to change our plan, what's the plan, we need to know what we're doing, you know, do we go on wets, do we stay on slick tires? And some people are like, you know, we can figure it out, it's a strain, you know, what's the worst thing you can do? You can put it in the wall, it doesn't get any worse than that. So, you know, it's a difference in approach, and it's also a difference in team culture, and I think overall the cooler heads tend to prevail in such a situation.
Yeah, they tend to, indeed, because the cooler you are, the kind of more level-headed your decisions are, really, and that means that you can just make better ones, and that really prevails. But it's a real difference and a surprising difference, actually, to Michi Hoier, who was one of the leaders in LMP2, who was saying how he would prefer if the rain would kindly go away, and he didn't really want the rain. So it is a stark contrast, because if we'd have asked Kweekel the same question, he'd have probably said, bring it on, really. It doesn't really matter, because, as you say, it is the same for everyone. And sometimes it's difficult to say, particularly if you're having a terrible time in torrential rain, then it's difficult to think positively and say it's the same for everyone. But at the moment, they're in such a good place, Drillers Esports. I don't think that they're under pressure from anybody in behind, and they're not. They've got a big lead at the moment. They know that anything can go wrong. They're staying focused, they're staying level-headed, and they're not panicking about the situation that could arise in the next few moments. So there's a very relaxed demeanour around that team at the moment. You have to feel, from talking to Kweekel anyway.
Yeah, I mean, of course, driver interviews can sometimes deceive because you're not getting the voice of the driver in the car. The driver in the car might be panicking, and the and might be the voice of calm in that team, going, chill out, you got this, it's just driving. And the driver might still be panicking, so you don't get the full view. But it sounds like they got things under control right now, that they've been maybe expecting this rain, and it might suit them at this moment, whereas some other teams might be struggling a bit more. But then again, I can't imagine Enzo Fassi, for example, panicking when the rain eventually hit, and we saw what happened to him. So it's not a telltale sign that you're necessarily doing fantastically, but it is a good sign for the team going forward. Now, driving in the rain, Ewan, have you done any motorsports in the rain in the past?
Not in real life, no. But no, not in real life. But I guess in Sims I kind of have, but it's not the same. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't about to, go, oh, I've done this and that in the rain in real life. I really haven't, but I've been karting in pouring rain in real life, where it started out sunny. When we were in this small karting track in Forssa, Finland, and these were rental karts, mind you. They were still pretty okay. I mean, it was an outdoor track. They were something like 2 strokes, I think, pretty decent, 125cc or 120. Anyway, pretty fast things, and not the super fast things, but pretty fast things. And it started raining halfway through the qualifying session. Now, I was in the pack that did the qualifying first, so we got to do a full dry qualifying. And the second guys, well, they were out there on the wets, and the second group is the faster group. So, of course, this is a rental track day event, and we don't have special rain tires, and it was absolutely pissing down with rain. Absolutely pouring down, like those summer monsoons you get. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. So we actually had to put it on hold for like 20 minutes. Then the worst of the rain was over, and we cleared some of the worst ponds, but still, driving a rental cart in rainy conditions, that was about the worst experience I've ever had behind the wheel of anything. That's how bad it got. So I can sympathize with some of those guys struggling with it, because really it's difficult in pouring rain when the car doesn't quite turn in, and then when you hit the throttle it's gonna immediately spin out on you, so you kind of have to balance, and you kind of have to shift your weight around, and in sim racing you don't even have that option. So it can be very difficult for the rookies, and I can't help but imagine there has to be at least one driver in this field who hasn't done rain conditions in race conditions, who hasn't experienced racing multi-class in the rain, especially with such immense pressure. So that's got to be something to watch out for, and drivers making mistakes, we try to be easy on you, is all I'm saying, unless you're Enzo Fassi.
Yeah, we do indeed, and I think you're seeing that a little bit further down towards the back of the GT3 field. We've seen quite a lot of mistakes from those guys, the likes of DSR Dream Team, B32 Racing, not to dip them in it or anything, but they have made quite a few mistakes throughout this period of rain, and it's been a shame to see for them, but it's all part of a learning experience really for them, and we're certainly enjoying the show, at least, even if they're maybe not enjoying it quite so much. But I've just received some insider information. I'm not entirely sure how accurate this is, so I might take this with a pinch of salt just for now until we can get this confirmed from other teams as well. But Roy Dominic has just got into contact with me and said that One Move Esports are the only LMP2 still out on the dry tyres. Everybody else is on wet weather tyres or intermediate tyres. They are still out on the dries. I haven't really been monitoring their lap times to see how that's working out for them. They seem to be a little bit slower than the guys around them, as you might expect, in these conditions using dries. And I can't exactly say to you what they said about people who are on dry tyres, because it's not exactly suitable for broadcast, but yeah, they're definitely just kind of not really caring about the result at the moment and just having a bit of fun with it seems at the moment. I'm not really sure why they're still out there on dries, other than the fact they're just having fun.
I don't know, maybe putting some Eurobeat on. I mean, it's about that time of the night. Put some Eurobeat on, put the traction control off, let's see it. That is a dare, by the way.
Yeah, we'll see who's the first one to do that, because that would be quite a brave one. to go for, but yeah, there you go. It is that kind of night, or that type of night as well, coming up towards 3 a.m. again in Europe. Now, I believe it is in the rest of Europe actually as well as Finland. I think the clocks have gone back everywhere in Europe today. I'm not entirely sure because I seem to remember in the past the UK having clocks go back, and for a week it was all kind of wrong, where Europe was 2 hours in front and UK was 2 hours behind as opposed to the normal 1 hour. Not entirely sure, but it doesn't really help when you live on an island way away from everybody else and the time zones are all wrong. Yeah, it's a bit weird, but and that's why we're getting a little bit confused at the moment with all the time zones and timings and things that are going on right now. But what we do know is that we might actually have a developing battle here in LMP2 for second place. This is a pretty important battle as well between Fair Racing Team and Drillers Esports. Bogdanov, after that rear wing he had off, has really got his act together now, and he's closing down rapidly on Chris Gonzalez in front.
And this is going to get...
As I say that, he's gone for a spin at the Indianapolis corner. He's going to have to be really careful now to get it turned around without losing any front wing, but Indianapolis has claimed the victim there, and just as the battle was closing up, it's all gone up in smoke for Bogdanov.
Once again, I think he was going for those drift points. You know, can't help but imagine thinking about, as we see a replay of it earlier. Note that's David Greco actually having an earlier situation going around the GD3 car, the lime green GDE. So here we go. And Bogdanov there had a bit of a situation heading into the Indianapolis corner, and can't help but feel that he is not going to be exactly happy about that. Yeah, and here we see it once again. So spinning around, coming to the corner, just a little bit too fast. The back end doesn't have the grip anymore, and he just went for a lazy spin. And the worst part about that is that he had to actually reverse out of it. That always feels so clumsy as a driver when you... Oh! Once again!
Dear, oh dear.
One. Thankfully, he was away from any of the walls. That's about the only place in the Porsche curves you can spin out without hitting anything. He's a lucky boy.
He's really lucky at the moment. 2 spins without hitting anything, and now he's into the pit lane. And you have to say that rightfully so as well, because he has not been having the best of times out there in the last couple of moments. Into the pit lane he comes then, does Bojan Bogdanov. And now he's going to lose probably a position on track in terms of overall to Mike Gutterup of the Elite SimSport Racing Team, but that's not a pass for position. So is Bogdanov going to get out of that car? You have to say, when you've made mistakes like that, you can be a little bit rattled. As we mentioned earlier, mistakes can lead to other mistakes, and that might have been a little bit what's going on there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he had that spin at Indianapolis, and then, you know, maybe his tires didn't like it. Maybe his tires were overheated after the initial spin. Maybe he was wearing out the tread because he was locked on the brakes, trying to avoid hitting any walls. And then once he came to the Porsche curves, he just did not have the grip. Either way, you know, I think for Bogdanov, it's about the right time for a little bit of a break, having a bit of a mental recheck, getting yourself into balance. And, you know, he's not the only one about to go for a break, because for us, we are going on a commercial break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few minutes.